It is 4 o'clock, so it is time for our weekly Craftsbury webinar. Our presenter this week is Dan Roock. Dan started his coaching career at the Florida Institute of Technology way back when, and since then has been a graduate assistant at Syracuse, the head coach of women's rowing at Princeton, coached the Cornell heavy men and the Dartmouth lightweight men. So Dan has been in coaching for quite a long time. I asked him if he wanted to do a webinar, and he came back with don't do that, do this, or don't do this, do that, and said it was going to be a coach's rant, which immediately got my antenna up, and I said, I can't wait for that. So without further rambling, I will turn it over to Dan, and we'll get started.
Awesome. Okay, it's I assume I'm on the screen for everybody. Once thanks for tuning in to this, and again, I hope everyone's healthy, and I hope everyone has really good internet connection, because as we move along, I'm going to have quite a bit of video, and again, I think video in rowing, especially as a coach or even as an athlete, video is so helpful, and it's such a visual sport that all my chatter is way better explained when we can see some pictures. And I also know that the title here is in sort of bad form to be so negative, like don't do this, do that, and I realized that, but it's better than the first title I thought we would have, which was everything rowers do that make me mad. And the reason things would make me mad is that you'd see wasted energy, or you'd see things that just would produce in time issues you wouldn't want to see. So I'm just trying to be very positive with my negativity, and knowing that over all the years I've been coaching, I just recognize that there's certain things that rowers tend to do that really mess things up in one way or another, and that if they didn't do it, and there's usually pretty simple fixes to these things, that they'd be better off. And rowing, a lot of times, the technical glitches or the mistakes, or whatever you want to call it, are not the absence of something, but there's too much of something else. There's just too much motion this way or that way. So I just thought I'd share a bunch of these things. Some are sort of technical, rowing form stuff, and some is just other things like mental attitudes about what you're doing that I think have really proven to be inhibited, or it would inhibit people from being as good as they can be. So we'll get going with that. And one thing that I do believe as a coach, and I've seen it happen a lot, is that I love the adage that artists claim for sculptors, like that a sculptor look at a big rock, and they wouldn't see a big rock, they'd see sort of that masterpiece that sort of lies within it. And that a really good sculptor isn't like making this piece of art, they're just removing the stone that isn't the masterpiece, and you're left with the masterpiece. So I like that sense that as we do this as a coach or as a rower, you're just taking away the stuff that gets in the way of you being a really, really, really good rower. And again, I think again, from watching this and working with it and dealing with athletes of all sorts and non-athletes of all sorts, there are some pretty simple fixes to these issues, and so we'll go with that. And another sort of theme of all this too is I have to give credit to Ed Hewitt, who is a good friend, and he's the guy who runs the Row 2K website. He's also a really good rower and a really good coach. And one day I ran into Ed. He's at Princeton, is where he lives, and this is back when the national team had the women and the lightweights and the heavyweights were all training out of Princeton, and Ed would just kind of show up and help out when he could. And so one day I saw him down and said, "Hey Ed, what are you doing down here?" So I'm going to take out the trash, and he was referring to two things. One is he was getting all the guys that weren't making the boats, the guys who were still around training there, that didn't make the 8 or weren't going on the traveling squad or whatnot. So, these are still world-class rowers, but they were the guys that didn't get a lot of attention. So they were the trash of the camp. But then he elaborated too that when he's taking out the trash, he works on taking out the trash, because usually why they're the trash is because they do stuff that's unnecessary. And as much as he could spend time getting rid of the stuff that wasn't helping him out, these guys were getting better. All right, so I listed all these things at one point, and the list has shifted and changed around quite a bit, but I'll still just kind of explain, and then we'll get into video and kind of just elaborate on what's going on. First, I think the number one thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to fear challenge. You don't want to be afraid, in the boat, or not have some courage. And I think that's a huge thing. Either you're going to race or just change the way you move in the boat or look to get better at the sport. So the don't is the fear things. The do is to have some courage. Have the curiosity to explore the stroke and how the boat moves, and that's so much the fun of rowing. And I'm going to skew this towards single sculling, because I think Craftsbury, that's what we do at Craftsbury mostly. And that's what's the joy of single sculling is too. You make a motion and you feel it, and the boat moves, and it's you. So that's the big number one. Is just things that make me better when people are afraid to make a change, or they're stuck in a rut, and so you don't have any growth. So just just go for it. Make things move. The worst thing, you get wet, you flip over, and you climb back in again. And really good rowing has, there's precision to it, but it's not restrictive, and it's not, it's kind of raw, and it's to really race hard, and so have that attitude about things. And then the number two thing, as we're moving through, is don't sort of disrespect your equipment. And what I mean by that is you really, equipment can be your friend, man. It can really help you out. If you have a really well-rigged boat, that is just going to be great. And if you're sort of disrespecting, you don't rig your boat well, you're never going to be as good as you can. And I think a boat that's rigged well is, it's like playing a musical instrument that's tuned well. So don't disrespect the stuff, but really take care of it. I don't want to get into rigging too much, but just be sure your boat is in a good place, like your pitches are accurate. If your pitches are off, you're never going to balance the thing, or that your heights are at least in the ballpark. And again, we could go on for hours about rigging, and I don't want to do that, but just to know that I do think it's important that the boat's got to support you, and you got to be comfortable in the boat. So these dimensions have to work right. And another thing is, and a real pet peeve of mine, I don't know if I can even show what this is. I found this in my box in the garage. It's a little bit of the slide track. It's just a tiny little bit of, not slide track, the foot stretcher track with the little grooves in it. You saw little grooves on top. The one thing that really makes me mad is when I see people get in a boat and they want to adjust their foot stretchers and they don't take their feet out of the shoes. And that's classic disrespect of your boat. People grab on the gunnels and they shake their feet back and forth and they yank and they get their slide track where they want it to go. But of course, that just, it eats away at these little tiny grooves. And then soon enough, these same people will be complaining about how oh, my foot stretcher moved. And of course it did, because you ripped the grooves off and you can't attach anymore. Stuff like that. Just, but man, this is a real irritation, especially when you're dealing with the collegiate crew and whatever. So again, this is the rant part. I'm going to have my little rant parts, and I'll have my positive parts, but I'm going to rant about, if you got to adjust your foot stretchers, take your feet out of the shoes, man. And if you see people that don't do that, that they're just ignorant, stupid people that don't know how to really treat their equipment right. Again, when it does work, it's so much your friend. As I mentioned, like the equipment is made to be balanced right, to have the boat be balanced, and it just work right if you keep it enough of that. Keep it happy for yourself. Another sort of rant, a little aspect here is just you don't want to waste time when you have the chance to go rowing. And I think one of the biggest time wastes and things that isn't as necessary as it ought to be is people get so attached to their water bottles and think that you got to have a water bottle in the boat. No, you don't have to have a water bottle in the boat. I understand that, hydration is important for athletes, and it's critical. But for the time that you spend in a boat in a practice, a typical practice, if you're out for an hour, hour and a half, you don't really need the water. And the reason that, and I don't disallow people having a water bottle in the boat or anything like that, but the only reason I really get irritated with that is that there's so much time, like you're ready to shove, everyone's ready to go, and someone's got to run up and get the water bottle. And then they put it in the boat, and they don't put a sock on it, so the water bottle slaps back and forth, all practice back and forth. And then suddenly you have a boat that doesn't have any skin left in the interior of the hull. Like you just wear out actual hulls into your boat. But if I had a rant, and that's what I am doing, man, it's less critical than you think. And then during practice will stop and turn around, and then there'll just be this long water bottle, everyone drinking water. And then they'll share water bottles. And oh man, awful. You don't want to do that, especially these days. At any rate, if you look at, or you think about marathoners who are the world-class marathoners running 2 hours, like a little over 2 hours, just going fast. How many times do they stop to get water? Never. Because, and do they slow them down? No. After the race, they get water. Of course they do. But the action, like you just don't need as much as people think. But whatever, I just see so many folks so mentally attached to their water bottles that that's not necessary. All right, the one other thing before we really get into the rowing part, the real in the boat moving, is just traffic patterns. And don't be ignorant of the traffic pattern in your body of water, wherever that is. And don't think that you don't have to look around. So please do. And I bring that up because it just, I've actually been in 2 pretty serious accidents in rowing, and they do happen. And both times it was because folks weren't looking around. Folks were on the wrong side of a body of water. And in one, I don't think you can see the scar on my hand. Maybe you can, but I almost lost my thumb because the scar starts here, goes all the way around the other side. And this was sitting in the middle of an 8, but 2 8s collided once when I was rowing in college. And, all of a sudden I could see the bones in my hand because my thumb was about to fall off. And the other one is, I was running a single once, and a pair just ran right into my quad. And I'd love to show off my scars if anyone wants to see that. But I had to pull the bow of a pair out of my leg to get to shore. So it's pretty ugly. But at any rate, rant time, whatever is any rant, anything that really, really causes trouble out on the water, it's when people aren't going the right way. And that's just irritating. All right, so now let's go rowing. What are these things that you do that hurt the speed of your boat? So here are the list of don'ts. And again, these are the things that just over time, I've been doing this for a long time, I just see these happen all the time, and the killers. And these are pretty obvious, I think, but maybe not. Don't lunge at the catch. That's the big deal. Don't just keep reaching. Just don't lunge up at the front end. Somewhat related, don't miss water with your blade. Don't miss water. That's just that, don't do it. Don't have a bad drive connection. Don't have poor connection, because then your boat's not going anywhere. Don't fall out of the drive plane. What I mean by that is your oar handles are going to follow a certain path, and it's sort of the plane that you want to drive the boat in. And since you don't want to fall out of that plane, and it's so common people fall out of that plane. And the last one is don't have poor handle contact. Just people call it grip. I kind of hesitate to talk about grip, although I have my little grip demonstrator here, little stem fleet grip. This is the grip. Be sure you don't grip the grip. It's just how you contact the handle becomes really, really critical. So those are the don'ts. And now we're going to get to the do's. Like, what do you do to be sure that there are the simple fixes to make all this work? These things all interrelate. So I think everyone understands in rowing, like, preparation is key, because all these problems are the things that we have trouble with. Like, the cause is usually something you did long before you got to the point where the problem occurs. So a lot of these issues we're going to talk about just, they all interrelate, because if you lunge at the front, you're going to miss water. You're going to have a bad drive connection. And then you get to the release, and the releases are awful. And it's not because you have bad releases, because everything that happened ahead of that really messed you up. All right, moving along. So here we go. The do's again are, to have the proper contact with the handle, and that's critical. The other do is having proper body preparation, getting your body ready in the stroke early, early in the recovery. The next is the slide. How do you manage the slide? You got to have a slide that's going to deliver you to the front end and not upset, but you can actually augment the run of the boat. So people call it slide control, and but whatever. I'll talk about how the slide is going to work, how that happens. Raising the hands at the catch end, put the blade in water, you got to raise your hands. Doing that with a full radius of the arm, and that'll be explained. But that's a simple fix that creates all sorts of positive things for you. Changing direction at the front end, to being sure that change of direction is done with your legs, not with the body. And then having what I would just call the full pull. It means that people always think about technique and pulling as sort of being two different things in rowing. But man, good pulling is good technique. I mean, good technique is pulling. But regardless of the intensity of the pull, you have to have a full pull. If you're not pulling all the way through, you're not going to balance. If you're not pulling all the way through, you're not going to get the run and the ratio and everything you need. So having a good full pull. All right, so here we go. Let's talk about the contact with the handle. And first, we'll watch some video if I can get this to work. And I got a lot of examples of people here. And I thought, I could dig up and show some of the best in the world folks. And actually some of these guys and women are pretty good. But I'm going to try to share my screen, and we'll start to show some video, and let's hope this all works out. Oh, all right. So this is the first time through. It'll take a moment. I can get rid of this. Can I? All right. If everyone's still there, I can get rid of the people, and we can watch rowing. Turn the sound down. All right. I'm hoping people can see that. So here we go. We'll just watch this for a bit. I'll explain what I decided when I'm picking videos. Almost all of this video are Green Racing Project athletes from years ago, and I thought I could just keep them anonymous, but I won't. I'll explain who's who. And so there's a lot of these are all good rowers. I mean, they've all had pretty good success, but everyone has issues they can work with. So what we're looking at right now is a double. It has Hugh McAdam, who's a lightweight guy in the bow, and Ben Dan, who is a heavyweight guy in the stern. And this is just a training day double. They never competed like this. These guys are just out training. They're just kind of cruising along. Not a bad double, not a great double, but I wanted to show, as we're talking about handle contact, how these guys sort of do that and how they differ a bit. And so let me see, as we move this along, just watch the hands on the handle. So handle contact, essentially, we've got Dan over here, who's really good at it, and Hugh, who struggles a bit. So if you can look at these hands, so Dan's, like his arms are out, his oar handles are below his hands. If you can see that, like his handles are below his hands. Here's he going up to the catch. So his arms, the weight of his arms just sit on top of the handles, and and it's really sort of easy to control things. If you look at Hugh behind, you see a lot more knuckles up in the air, and his oar handle isn't as underneath his hand as it is with and Ben's grip is so relaxed and easy. And as he hangs through here, he's got contact on the back side of the handle, pulling towards himself as he squeezes back. And Hugh is, and you just always see his knuckles, and you see a lot more tension in his arms and elbows. And then it comes time to release. Hugh's his wrists have to break a lot, whereas Ben has a nice job of rolling that oar handle kind of back in his hand. And so Ben's forearms are always really relaxed, and he's fluid. And when it comes time to put the blade in the water, all he has to do, see if we get a nice picture right up here. All he has to do is let his hands lift up. And he doesn't really put his blade in the water. He lifts his arms up and he allows the blades to drop in. He allows the handles to come up. Like right there, see how his hands are coming up? Like he's just taking the weight off the top of the handle and the blades go down. Whereas poor Hugh in the back, and again, Hugh's won the head of the Charles like a dozen times in the lightweight single. Like he's good, but he also suffers from forearm problems, or at least he did. And so much of that is just his contact. He's squeezing the crap out of the handle, and he never really allows that handle to breathe in his hand and move around. Whereas Ben does. Ben just has a lighter, easier grip. So we'll watch these guys finish this out, and then I'll explain a little bit more of what I'm talking about. But I just thought it's good to watch some rowing. And it's just, Ben is just this easy kind of oar handle rolls back in his hands, the feather rolls back up to square, but he's got the weight of his arms just resting on top of the handle. That's such a critical little element here as we go. And there they go. You know, there's other things going on, but we'll get to that later. But I think these guys are pretty slick. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully you'll see me again. Good, awesome, it's going to work. So again, get contact with handle. That's why I brought this little guide along. It's so critical that you have. And I think Larry Glackman, if you watched his last chat the last time around, there's a really good explanation of thumbs on the end, where the hands fall, etc. But all I'm really interested in is people feeling that on the recovery, you have weight on the top of this handle. You just feel like your arms are resting on the top of the handle. And then when it comes time to put the blade in the water, you just take this weight off, the handle comes up, and then you start pushing. And as you push a horizontal energy on the back side of the handle. So in the process, there is grip in a way. There's the hands are around the handle. But in reality, if you allow the equipment to do what it needs to do, and that you just have to let your arms relax, the weight of your arms will rest on top of the handle. Then you get up to the catch, you just take the weight of your arms off the handle, and then the blade goes to the water. So, and this grip just stays so calm and easy. And there's this feathering and squaring, you know, you kind of roll back and over the top. You kind of roll back and over the top. That it's not a huge amount of wrist like Hugh is doing like this. It's more like Ben was doing, which is just kind of rolls. You tap down, of course, and everything, but it's more just this rolling it out. So if you feel, again, recovery, you're just holding weight on the top of the handle, on the drive, you're just hanging the energy on the backside, and your hand can kind of relax all the way along, and it works. But for that to work, you have to have arms that are hanging out of their sockets the right way. And so another little quick trick or check. If you're holding your arms out in front of you as if you're sculling, and your arms in the position you think they ought to be, and then you bend your elbow, just hinge your elbow, if your hand comes up and smacks yourself in the nose, you're doing okay. If you sort of hang your arms out there like you think you are, and then you bend your arms and you're kind of hitting your chest or down any lower, your elbows are rotated out too far like this. I don't know if you can see my elbow. Again, this is the kind of stuff that's easy to coach if you're standing next to somebody, but less so if you're online. But if you squeeze the handle and you kind of rotate this hand outward like that, that's really bad news, because your lat connection now to your bone in your shoulder is all stretched out and not going to work at all. But if your arm rotates in this way, namely your elbows locked down, well then your shoulder here, the lat connection, which is right here in your shoulder, isn't all stretched out anymore. It's tucked right in. The shoulder's right in the socket. Everything's nice. And then this upper arm, it becomes wickedly strong in the connection, and because your lats are just straight directly into the muscle right where the bone ought to be in the shoulder. And the whole trick to that is the fact that your elbows are just in the right place, so that when the elbows bend, like, you don't have to move the shoulders around. They just kind of stay where they are. And the whole trick to that, again, is that if you hinge your elbow, you smack yourself in the nose. If you hinge your elbow, and again, if it's rotated up too much, you smack yourself down here, and you're going to have all kinds of shoulder issues and problems and whatever else. So sure, your elbows are rotated, in sort of this downward look. And another way to check on that is that if you're holding on to your handle, what's the kind of the weight? Where should the initiation of kind of the weight resting on the handle be? On the pinky side. So if you think, your pinky side of your hand, it's almost like you're shaking someone's hand. If your arm, you just relax your arm, the weight of your arm can sit right there, then your hand flops over. And if it flops over, then you can, there's your grip. But if people kind of want to grab on and squeeze from this end over here, all of a sudden your shoulders comes out of joint again, and the elbow comes out of joint. But because you're lifting this part of your arm up, and so the joints all stay in line. Again, you smack your nose, keep the initially kind of feel like you got the pinky side of your hand is what's resting on the handle. Then just flop it over so the other fingers can hang on it. Your thumb's where it belongs, and you're good to go. So the weight, I was curious about this, so I did an experiment a couple days ago, and I'll show you what that is. So anyway, okay, because I know when I'm rolling along, if you relax your arms and just let the weight of your arms just hang, and so the weight of your arms is resting on the handle, you have more than enough force to keep your blades well off the water by just relaxing your arms. So I was curious as to how heavy are my arms? Like if I'm sitting in a chair, put my arms out, how heavy are they? And I said, well, let's find out. So we found out. Let me see if I'll share my screen again. And then, okay, I'm learning now. I got to push 2 buttons. There we go. So that's, let's go to, here we go, Untitled. So now, here I am. I'm sitting in my living room with a little table over my legs with my bathroom scale, and I'm about to put my hands, relax my arms like they're just out, and I'm in the middle of the recovery. And so you can guess, how heavy are my arms? You'll find out in about 10 seconds. But how not? This is how heavy would my arms be resting on an oar handle if I was rowing. So there we go. 15 pounds. So I got 2 arms, 15 pounds. You figure it's about 7.5 pounds per each arm. So that 15 pounds, man, that's more than enough to get your blades out of the water. In fact, so that and so you just practice that you're not going to row with rigid arms. You're just going to let the mass of the arms rest on top of the handle, and it works. And you can see it in people that do that versus not. Get the elbows in the right place, pinky side, and you're good to go. So let's watch Hugh and Ben again. It's a different picture, different Hugh and Ben, same. I think it's the same day, but we'll just watch them rowing again a little bit, just to watch how Ben's arms do what I'm talking about. Hugh's arms don't. All right. Am I sharing my screen? Not yet. Hold on a second. Oh, I am still sharing my screen. Am I? Yes. Here we go. Share screen. Share. All right. This is going to be. Oh, where did they go? Where did they go? There they are. All right. Same guys going along. It might even be the same day. But just, again, just watch their arms. You can see how easily Ben, just his arms, you can even see how, like, it's in his arms comes out of his shoulders in his upper arm. It's just floating in the socket. And he drives and his arms are just hanging on it so nicely. Whereas Hugh is just more rigid. And you can see, like, around his elbow, his elbows are rotated up a bit. You can just see the muscles in his arms just working. And it's those forearms that really have hampered a lot of his rowing. He really has had massive forearm issues, but he hasn't been able to just hold the oar handle a little different, and he would be better off. But Ben just does a nice job. You just see the kind of the weight on the pinky side of his hand. I don't know if you can see if that's very clear in this particular shot. But Hughes isn't. He's kind of the weight on his hands on the handle is way up closer to the thumb, way up on the other side. But you can see how, like, Ben in these shots here too, the oar handle is just resting up against his hand because the weight of the oar is just being suspended up into his hand rather than him squeezing it. And then the blade drops in the water, he starts pushing his legs, and he's hanging on the other side. There we go. All right. Let's keep moving on because we've got lots of fun videos ahead. But there you go. First deal, I think, contact with handle, big. It's just big. You got to let the equipment do its thing. You got to let the blade find its own pitch. And if you grip hard, it's not going to happen. If you don't, we're better off. Okay. Me again. We're going to go now. The next big deal is body preparation. And if there's one drill or one aspect of rowing that I think needs most attention to really correct the most trouble, it's getting good body prep. And there's a couple of, I think, there is some athleticism involved in rowing. And I think catching properly is a very athletic moment. And this is probably the second most athletic moment in rowing is getting body preparation. And that is just you've recovered, your arms are reaching out, just have the pivot, the hip pivot forwards before the slide goes very far. And then that hip pivot actually induces kind of a lift in your knees, and then the slide can start to roll, and then we go forwards. If you start the slide too soon, and then you don't have your body mass in front. So again, once again, how the equipment is designed to make things work for you. The slides are canted down towards the stern. And so your slide is just going to work easily if you allow your body mass to go at the release from the back of the seat, just bring it forward to the front of the seat. And then you get in front of the seat and you'll be able to roll forward nice and easy. But getting this body prep early sets up the drive and where we want to drive the legs, everything, all these really positive things happen if you just get good body preparation. A quick story about body prep. Hopefully I'm going to run out of time if it's too many stories, but this one's a fast one. Mike Tatey was a freshman coach at Princeton, and I was a freshman coach just before he was. I went off to grad school, and then Mike coached at the freshman at Princeton. And I came down to check in on the crew once in a while for a launch ride just to see what's what. And I had recruited all these guys, so I knew the level they were, and they were good, but they weren't that good. But I watched Mike's crew row, and it was beautiful. These freshmen, half are novices, half were experienced guys, had this amazing body preparation, which just set up the motion in their boat and their drive fantastically. So Mike, how did you ever get that? Freshmen, man, they just don't want to do that. He said, well, we do body over angle pause. Like, I said, well, how often? He said, well, every day we do body angle over pause. So, well, how, really? He said, yeah, we not only every day, we do it all practice. And sure enough, I started watching this practice, and every stroke they took, they paused with body angle. until they started doing actual physical pieces where they're racing, did these freshmen stop pausing at the body. But and he wasn't kidding. That's how they rode. They paused with body angle, and then they took another stroke, and then they paused with body angle. But whatever, it worked. It was beautiful. At any rate, I want to show you some examples of pausing at body angle. Again, I think this is the second most athletic move in rowing, and I want to share the screen because I want to show you my 3-year-old daughter executing excellent body preparation. Here she goes. Ready? Okay, here we go. Ta-da, ta-da, body prep. That's it. That's the second most athletic move in rowing. You can reach for potato chips on the table, but for a little girl, her stuffy is the thing. She reaches over, pivots at the hip. There, she's got it. Long arms, boom. One more time, Viola. You're doing a good job. Ready? Reach, body prep, body angle. Bring it home. Excellent. So there we go. Good job, Viola. So that's it. It just goes, there you go. You don't need, people have different levels of physical capacity to lean forward. A 3-year-old, pretty flexible. 63-year-old, not so much so. But still, the big deal is get that body prep before you get on with the rest of the stroke. Because whatever you're going to get it early. A lot of people talk about like holding your knees down, and that is a good idea, but don't hold them down forever. Holding your knees down in the recovery just allows you to get this body angle forward, but you actually want those knees to soften and start to move as you pivot the hip over and your hamstrings start to work and connect. Just your knees will naturally rise. Let that happen. But here we go. We're going to look now at back to sharing the screen. This is going to be, if I can find her here. Okay, here we go. Elizabeth Sunshine, who was a GRP athlete right out of Bates. This is like her, when she first got to Craftsbury. She's just sculling along here. She is got pretty bad body prep, unfortunately. Let's zoom this back a little and it's a little closer and we can watch it. So right, here we go. So what I mean here now is I'll stop this and we can go like hand to hand. So here you go. She's finished the stroke. She's reaching her arms out. And look at that. Her slide has just started to move forward. And she hasn't even gotten to the perpendicular yet. She just hasn't, and now she's going up her slide and she stopped getting any angle at all. And then she's getting a little more angle here. And then she gets all the way up to the front of her slide. And what's going to happen? She's going to really reach big time right now. See right there, the slide, well, there we go. Slide is kind of stopping. And there you can just see how her body kind of squashes down over her knees right at the front end. And then that causes a lot of troubles. One is, it will show later right there, she's lifting her blades in the water because she lunged with the body forward at the end. When you lunge at the end of the recovery, what's the first thing you do? You bounce your body back up into the drive. And so you lift to put the blades in the water at the front end, which then stalls your legs. And so you never get a good horizontal drive. Then you get to this point in the stroke where you need that body angle to move the boat. She doesn't have it to move the boat, so the blades pop out of the water. And then she finishes the stroke like long before she really should. What you need to know about Elizabeth, though, is she got way, way better. And since this is her first foray into, really sort of sculling training, she's since made the national team a couple times. She's been a finalist at the World Championships in the women's quad. She's always a contender at the head of the Charles. She's good. But anyway, here we go. Let's run this one more time again. So this is what I mean by bad body prep. Arms come away. She's coming, getting her lay back. But here's her slide is moving, and she hasn't even gotten to the perpendicular yet. She gets to the perpendicular. She's way down her slide, but she's got this body. She doesn't have enough angle yet, so she's going to get it all at the last minute. Right there. There it goes. Whoa. So her blades go in the air higher, higher, higher. So right there, her blade should drop into the water, but she's got so much momentum and stiffness going into the front end that they don't yet until now. Look, her slide hasn't gone anywhere yet, but her body sure has opened up. Now she locks into the water here and kind of stalling her legs. Her legs are trying to push, but the body's moving so much they can't. And she's lost all this length. And then now, see, the legs still can't push because she's opening the body against them instead of, and if you look at the blade, the shaft of the blade, there's not any bend in it. So she's working hard, but she's not moving the boat because she didn't push out the front. She didn't push out the front because she didn't have any body angle early in order to allow the leg. Then she releases too soon. So you think, oh my God, that woman's a mess. But not really. She just needs to get body angle. So here we go to prove to everybody that Elizabeth really is an elite athlete and really can move a boat. Just a few months later, let me see if we can put this away. A few months later, we had the good sunshine. So here she's same woman, same rowing out at Craftsbury, as I think everyone could recognize this out here. And we'll zoom in a little closer in just a moment, and you will see a huge difference in what she's doing. So and there's still issues to deal with, but here we go. What is she gonna do? Right now, her arms are coming away. Her arms are kind of get away, but her body, look at that, her body is going into the perpendicular and her slide hasn't moved yet. So she's doing it. Her slide still hasn't moved yet, and she's moving to the perpendicular. She still hasn't moved yet. And now her knees are starting to rise a little bit, but her slide still hasn't moved yet, which is awesome. But now the slide is just about ready to move. Now it is moving, but look at how much body angle she's got. And because she's got all that body angle before her slide moved, the boat's gonna run a ton further. And now she's finally coming up the slide, but look at how easy and simple it is as she comes up the slide. Her body's got its angle, and she gets up to the catch end. And what does she do? Well, she's still going forwards. She lifts her hands to put her blade in the water. She doesn't lift her body anymore because she doesn't have to. And then what goes on next? She pushes her legs. So she gets horizontal, and she's got horizontal energy, and she's pushing her legs, and her body's relaxed and just connecting that leg drive, whereas before, she was working her body against her legs. And if we could see it, she's got a bend in her blade. But the big deal here, she still breaks the drive plane and kind of falls down a little bit. But look, as you can remember from the previous picture, right now, she's getting way more further through the back end as she finishes out, way further through the back end. All right, there we go. I'm gonna speed up because, man, we've got a lot more to look at. But again, so this is proof. One is that with a little body angle, man, you get way better. And it just corrects all these other issues. And the fact that there's somebody who just worked at it and she got better, way better. All right, so here we go. So you got your body prep. And then the next big deal, the things that's gonna help out, and you just saw it with Elizabeth there, is you gotta move down the slide. How's the best way to do that? You just sort of drag your heels. You hear different coaches look at this differently. Some people say, pull up on your toes or whatever. I think it's much better if you get your body angle over, your body mass comes forward, you naturally kind of weight your heels, and then you just kind of pull your heels towards you, and that'll put you forwards so that you can get to the front end ready to drive your legs back the other way. It kind of sets up your hamstrings and such to have that happen. So it always sort of reminded me in a kind of a silly way of when a dog has worms. And you ever see a dog kind of, goes across the carpet by kind of scooting. They got really good body angle if you think about rowing like in every possible way you can. You see these dogs kind of scooting with their butt behind them, and they just have really good body angle, and they're keeping their butt behind them, like your slide should be behind you as you're coming forwards. I had a little video of a dog scooting, but I think I've lost it. And to be honest, it's probably a good thing for everybody. So we'll leave that out. I won't bother trying to search for it again and mess up the rest of the presentation. But you kind of, you drag your heels, and that you get your body mass ahead of your seat, drag your heels towards you, just keep dragging your heels. The slide is slope downwards. You're going to easily come forward. The momentum of your boat is backwards. Rushing your seat is just silly, and it's almost impossible. If you get well prepared, you just drag your heels. And maybe we'll do the dog scooting. If you're interested, you can just Google dog scooting, and then there's a GIF page of these dogs just sort of rubbing their butts on the carpet. But with excellent body angle and excellent body preparation for a dog or for a human too. All right. The next deal is, we've already talked about a little bit, but now we got to put the blade in the water. You've gone off the slide. And the one thing that really is critical to rowing well is that you have your full, you get up to the front end. If you got the grip on the handle right, and you got the weight on top of the handle, get up to and you just have to take the weight off the handle to put the blade in the water. People make the catch into something that, all these extra things going on, like lunging again is awful because you're pushing down on the handle just when you want the handle to be rising. And essentially you just want to unweight the handle, just unweight it, and the blade will catch all by itself. And you can do that if you're ever in your boat, just let go of your handle and you have perfect catches, just perfect, because you didn't do anything. And you just let gravity take the handle. But if you're well prepared, you slide up, and but to have the hand move upwards, it really requires a stable body, and then and just have, in order for the body to stay stable, this arm bone into the shoulder socket has to be like a radius point. You're not moving the shoulder, just the bone. Your arm is sort of your full arm is going to radius just a little bit out of the arm. And it doesn't go a lot; it just goes a little bit. But that's how you catch. All you have to do is just unweight the handle. And let me show you some more rowing, of course, and you will see Charlie, another GRP athlete from long ago. Again, this is the don't. The Charlie does not use a full arm radius, and it causes all kinds of trouble for the poor guy. And yeah, Charlie's a decent rower. He works at it. He's got a lot of pretty good stuff going on. When he gets to the front end, he uses his body to put the blade in the water. So we'll see that here. So here we go. He's coming forward. So he's got good body prep. Look at that. He's doing okay with the body prep. He gets a pretty decent slide motion. He gets up to the front. But now he's going to change direction. And what we're going to see is that he doesn't let his hands, right now his hands should just go up. His full arm radius should just radius up. But they do a tiny bit there. But what's happening is, you can see his body moving up. His body's moving up. His body's moving up. Slide hasn't gone anywhere yet, but man, his body's moving up. So his arm is sort of locked into his shoulder. So in order to raise his hands, which puts the blade in the water, he's got to lift his body up. And so that's what he's doing. Look at that. Up, 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 up. And so, it's not moving the boat. That's just lifting up. So poor Charlie, if he'd be so much slicker and he'd get so much better connection off the front, if he'd only, right here, see, he lunges a little bit, kind of squats his shoulders down, and then his hands do come up a little bit by themselves, but then it's all upper body. His body's lifting. And that's just not going to work. All right, so we are going to watch someone who is doing it really well. And so I'll stop Charlie here. I'll put him away. And then we have Maddie. So here's Maddie. Again, another GRP Craftsbury person from long ago. Maddie was a U23 sculler for the US for quite a while, a couple of seasons. All right, where do we go here? Let's go. All right, here we go. So she does a really good job of putting the blade in the water by just having upper arm radius. So here's Just show you what I mean by that. So here comes Maddie up to the catch end. There's other things that are going on here that may not be the best, but what she does really well, she gets to the catch. There she is, and look at this. Look at her hands go up. Her shoulders didn't go up. Hands went up. Hands went up. Hands went up. And then she pushes her legs, and away she goes. So she just does that really, really well. Let's see that again. So she comes forward. She's coming forward, coming forward. And she also has the weight of the handle, or she's just holding her arm's weight on top of the handle. So when she gets up here, lost my, right, here we go. Where'd it go again? The slow-mo part. Here it is. She's just taking the weight off the handles. You don't see her gripping or grabbing the handle at all, and her blades just drop right in, boom, and away she goes, and then she pushes. So she's got really good contact with the handle, and she's got really good full arm radius to put the blade in. We'll watch this a little bit. She comes around the corner, and you'll see you'll see things. She's doing all, you can watch other things that are a little wacky, but in a moment, she'll will trail behind her, and you can just see how nice her catches are because the way she drops her blade in. So again, full arm radius is the big deal here. Full arm radius. She gets well prepared, full arm radius, and it's patient, and she's just right on the handle properly. So all she needs to do at the catch end is just let the blades go to the water. And the other people always wonder, how do you find the water? Well, I tell you, I can find the water for you. It is under your boat. And to find that water, you just have to let your blades fall. And they will always find the water unless you're upside down. And so finding the water is one of the easiest things ever because you don't have to do it. The equipment will. You just get up here, and she gets up there and she just lets both hands come up, and really all she's doing is unweight. Body is still, shoulders are still. She just unweights the handle. Boom, boom, boom. That's a pretty darn nice catch right there. So just right at the top of the arch, she doesn't miss any water. Boom, takes like whatever, 2 little hits or maybe 3 hits of the little button here, and her blades are in the water. And then she just pushes, and then no tension. It's all relaxed. So it's just really good. Why? Well prepared, full arm radius, and she unweights the top of the handle. Good job, Maddie. And again, she's U23 level. She was I don't know, top 10 in the world, I think, a couple times, and pretty good. All right, we're gonna keep on moving here. Let's. I'm not even gonna go back to me because who wants to watch me? Let's watch rowing. Let's watch the next thing. So we got full radius arm. We're putting the blade in. The water's always underneath. You just unweight the handle, and the blade will find the water all the time. And now the thing we want to really watch for is changing direction with your legs. So if you're well prepared, you've dragged your heels into the front end. You've done your full arm radius, unweighting the handles. Your grip is, or your non-grip, I should say, is good. The thing you do next, you got to push your legs, and that's going to set everything up. So what we have here, this is the men's lightweight double and the men's heavyweight double U.S. cruise rowing in Eberbach, Germany, back in 2015. Eberbach is famous because it's where the Empacher factory is. In fact, since we're both rowing Empachers, they were allowed to train there before the Worlds that were in France. And so this is, there are 3 sort of GRP representatives here. The far boat is Ben Dan, who we saw before rowing with John Graves. The near boat is Josh Knesny, who was a GRP guy rowing with Andrew Campbell. And this lightweight boat ended up the year later coming in 5th at the Olympics. Actually kind of running with the speed of the best boats there until right at the end. They kind of fell back a little bit right at the end. But excellent boat. But watch what they do. What do they put the blades in the water with their arm radius? What are they doing? They're changing direction with their leg drive. So unlike poor Charlie, who we saw earlier, who changes direction with his body lift, What I mean by changing directions, up at the front end, you're going on the recovery, you got to change direction, start driving. How do you do that? Well, watch these guys. Here they come up. Well, you know, good body angle, well prepared, dragging their heels. Um, uh, Pretty good grips, or non-grips, you know, they're going to unweight the handle here. So what do they do? They both of them, look at that. They both unweight the handle. Maybe not perfectly in time on that stroke. And then what happens now? They start pushing their legs. See, they're pretty far into their leg push. Pretty far into their leg push. Push. And you can see they don't shoot their tail, or they don't distort the body when they do it. They connect to it and they push. So they're changing direction with their legs, which then allows for a really good connection. And I want to talk about connection. It's how your body drives the boat, and how you can have force against the oar handle, and that force is up against the pin, and the blades are in the water. That's the connection. And so these guys are just doing a little steady state row, zipping along this nice little river in Germany. But every stroke, man, they just push the legs, and that sets up the drive, so then they can accelerate the body. And then at the back end of the stroke, for both of these boats, you can watch how they can continue to accelerate. They can continue to accelerate the boat, even at steady state here, where they're not really cranking that hard. Right, I'm going to zip this back so it gets a little bit more to side shot. So the big deal, man, they just change direction at the front end. So even the load they have in their hands up against the handle has got nothing to do with anything but their leg drive. And if you want to move a boat, it's got to be horizontal energy. And your legs are just ready to go with horizontal energy. Your upper body isn't. Your upper body can't put much force on that handle horizontally, but your legs can. So use them. And then just how your legs and your hamstrings, your quads get it started, and your hamstrings to take over. Your hamstrings so critical in how you can open up your body, and how you can accelerate the body, how we go from strongest muscle to weakest muscles, how it matches the acceleration of the boat. It's critical. And that's where really good rowers separate from not so good, is can you leg body arm it, or do you do too much body early and stall your legs and ruin the horizontal energy that you need to move the boat. So there you go. These guys are good. And they just push their legs. Don't let the body distort, but push the legs, accelerate. So that's a key thing. All right, I got one more video to show people, and then my time's going to be up. I can't believe I'm making it on time, but that's good. So here we go, back to Craftsbury. We go, and this guy is Willie Cowles. He was at Craftsbury for 2 years, I think, altogether. Here, he's working on the full pull. So he's not, what I mean by that is he's trying to stay in the drive plane. So you think about the drive plane is where your blades go in the water, and he's doing a pretty good job of it. He's got a few disconnections, but what I like about what Willie's doing here is that his blades, like he puts his blades in, well, he's off balance there on that one. But here's a good example. He's off balance, but okay, don't worry about it. Just have your hands come up, and what's going to happen is you find the water. Oh my goodness, that's a little bit more off balance than I would have liked there, Willie. But he gets it back together because the water's always under your boat. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a boat. And so you're always going to find it if you unweight your hands and let it happen. So his hands, pretty good job, contact on top, gets to the catch end. He unweights, his hands come up. See that? His hand's going to come up. Then he pushes his legs. So he can get a pretty good long arm hang. It's not perfect. He should be more symmetric from arms to arm. And he should right there be using a little bit more body. But see, his arms are breaking a little bit too soon. He could have more body right there. But he's in the drive plane. His blades stay buried. His hands stay up in the plane right there. I actually like his elbows to be a little lower, to be honest, and away from his body a little bit. He's actually rigged too high, which creates the fact that he's got to lift his arms up. So he's got to lower his rigging, and he's going to be able to do an even better job of staying kind of the full pull all the way through the stroke, keeping his blades locked in. So again, poor Willie there, got to lower his riggers. I don't know why I didn't anyhow before I took this video, But he's doing a pretty good job of connecting through. And sort of an unknown thing about Willie here is he didn't like rowing the single. He's rowing the single now because his double partner was injured. So this is the spring of 2015. He wins the U.S. rowing speed order in the single, because his double partner is hurt. And so he gets to go to a World Cup. He doesn't want to, he goes to the World Cup, but he doesn't want to row the single. At any rate, a fully subscribed World Cup, and Willie ends up, he was made the B final. He ended up, I think, second or third in the B final. So he's top 10 in the world in the single scull. And he doesn't want to be in the single scull. So one of my regrets is I didn't encourage him to stay in the single this year. He kind of waited around till other people got healthy, and then, but didn't make the national team but he would have been top 10 sculler in the world. Anyway, but he doesn't like the single. But anyway, he's good at it. He's really good at it. Okay. I'm going to stop my screen share and come on back because it's now after 5 o'clock. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that, people. And again, just a quick review is the things that you don't want to do. You don't want to lunge. You don't want to miss water. You don't want to have bad drive connection. You don't want to fall out of the drive plane, and you don't want to have poor handle contact. But the way you do that is have good handle contact. Get your body prepared. Just drag your heels coming forward, keeping your butt behind you. When you get to the front end, just full arm radius, just unweight the handle, and then drive your legs, change direction with your legs, and everything else is naturally going to fall into that. Stay in the drive plane all the way. Releases are a piece of cake and simple if you're in the drive plane and pulling. If you're still connected and moving the boat, your release just happens. Piece of cake. There we go. I guess I got to finish, so I'm done.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Dan. That was a fantastic presentation. I have one question so far. So if anybody, I'll ask you that in a moment, but if anybody has questions that have come up, please message them to me privately in the chat. And Troy, do you want to introduce next week's webinar before we get into the Q&A?
Certainly could. We're going to do an erg-focused webinar next week by request of someone who attended one of our previous webinars. Seems perfectly natural that with a lot of people still on the erg and having restricted or no access to the water, that we would get some erg questions. So we're going to have a 4-panelist erg discussion. We're calling it everything you always wanted to know about the erg but had not yet asked. And we do anticipate it, as it always does, becoming Q&A by the end. But 4 of us are going to present our perspectives on the erg. And we hope to see many of you there next Wednesday at 4.
Okay, awesome. So question that just came in, which I think you can probably answer quickly, Dan, was from Kristen Miller saying that she noticed in many of the videos that the Craftsbury athletes had a black band on their wrist and was wondering what that was for.
That's a pretty good question. I think some of it's just sweat. Just to keep the sweat from getting onto the grip. If some of them, if it was back more up into their forearm, they were dealing with some like a tendonitis issue. I think most of that was just sweat. A lot of that was in the summertime, and they just didn't want to get, like a tennis player, just sort of the same idea, I believe.
Awesome. Okay. Question from Barbara Mahler asking if you could address square timing in order to accomplish that radial arm raise and clean catch.
Yeah. Yes. It maybe well, I'm kind of hesitating because it just sort of happens. If you square it's one of those things. If you square too soon, you get into trouble. If you square too late, you kind of get into trouble. But there's just this point where, as you, if you have the sort of the grip where you're kind of well, here we go. The drive grip, if you can sort of see it again, is your top of your hand is sort of flat. Your wrist is sort of above the handle, and you're kind of just able to hang on it. And then if you recover properly, there will be a little flex down in the in the wrist, but mostly you just kind of rotate the oar handle kind of rotates back in your fingers, so you're recovering kind of like this. Then as your arms reach out, there's just sort of this natural aspect of the reach just before you get to the catch end. As you're kind of coming out over the gunnels, it's just this kind of right and up. So I think that final sort of squaring of the blade is actually part of the unweighting, in that your arms are extended and this your wrist will kind of elevate and just continue to elevate. But as your wrist elevates, it both squares the blade and begins to drop it into the water. But that is, there's a little touch that I wish I could give you a better like moment, but you can actually sort of gradually, like I like the sense it's more of a gradual roll up, but again, as you're coming away and you're moving towards the catch, your arms are sort of swinging out over the side of the boat. It's just this, you just kind of, this little roll into there. And again, this where your oar locks, if you got an easy grip, your oar locks can help you out a ton because they know when your oar is fully squared or not. And all you got to do is sort of encourage this rotation right at the end, and the oar will, as long as you're not gripping, you're going to drop the blade right in, just at the right spot.
Okay.
Yeah.
And someone did actually ask just now, should the blade drop in at the entry while you're still compressing toward the stern, or right at full compression?
There's like a happy moment there when usually people think about it both ways, and sometimes just how someone's thought processes to action. Some people like to think that it's the last thing you do on the recovery. And then other people like to think that you just kind of, it's just like a moment all of its own, where there's that point when your knees get to like the top of the rise of the knees, and then so it's kind of a perception thing. But it is, I think there's like this, it's just an instant, but there's like a neutral moment there that's just at that change of direction that it happens. But the drive hasn't happened yet, but it drops in, and it's kind of, the drive begins. It's like you have a moment, and the beginning of that moment is letting the oar handle, unweighting the oar handle, and the back end of that moment is the push of the legs, and it's like, it's kind of the same instant in time, but it's not an instant. It is, and that's what makes the catch such a crazy thing. And that's where most people either lose or gain their speed. And it really is a touch instance, but the way you definitely ruin it if you're gripping really too hard, but you kind of just let that handle go. You don't really let it go, but you just unweight it and you play around with it. And you'll find that moment where it just works. And I think all you need to do is just unweight the handle, start pushing the legs, and the blade will kind of find the speed of the water as you push the legs, and and away you go. I do remember, here's a quick anecdote. Craftsbury used to be the training spot for a lot of foreign crews when they come to North American World Championships. So, and the Danish team used to come to Craftsbury a lot. And so back in 1996, when the Olympics were in Atlanta, the Danes would bring their national team to Craftsbury and would train here for maybe a month or more, so at least 3 weeks before either the Worlds, in this case it was the Olympics. So I was up here coaching the normal sculling groups and just watching these guys. And they're doing some pieces. They're doing like 3-minute pieces. And I really started watching the stroke man. Again, it's a sweep rowing, but it's the same idea. And he would unweight his handle so drastically at the catch, rowing like 40 beats a minute, he would take his outside hand off. It would happen like this, but that's how he would catch. He would just get forward and he would unweight so, he had the timing down just right and everything. And the change of direction with the leg push, that was instantaneously almost. But there was air between his outboard hand and the oar as he changed direction. So that just goes, this guy's a gold medalist, multiple gold medalists, rowing 40 beats a minute, pulling his brains out, but he could unweight that handle almost completely. So I just think of that, unweight, well, roll it up, unweight it, and push. But there's a moment. If you do it too soon, all this big splash doesn't work. If you do it too late, you miss a little bit of water, and you feel that too. So you kind of find the spot.
Okay, awesome. This question is one that, if any of you know me in person, you'll know that I relate to, but it's from Barbara Goldstein, and she's saying, if you're not too tall and you're trying to row longer, how can you reach at the catch without lunging?
Yeah, you just, you kind of have a limit. I would say you don't want to overcompress and you don't want to lunge. Just get that angle earlier, and most of the time when people lunge, they actually end up being shorter in the water because that lunge then initiates the taking of the water, which is lifting the back on again. Because the moment you lunge, you're pushing down on your hands and your blade's skying up. So typically, although you don't feel it, that's why everyone lunges all the time, because it feels like you're getting longer, and the stroke feels really heavy and hard because you've locked your body up, and you're not using your legs to make the thing move. So I guess my answer to that is, I would guess that you'd be longer than you think, and effective length is going to improve by just being sure you don't do that. You just again unweight the blade and start pushing, and I bet your blade goes in. It becomes more effective, or add its effectiveness in a longer stroke than you think. But we saw that one double there with Ben Dan. Ben Dan is under 5 feet, under 6 feet tall, rowing at a heavyweight. You know, he's got Eastern Sprint gold medals rowing for Brown, and he's not very tall at all. He does have enormously long arms for his height, which is helpful. But there is a point where if you got all the body angle you can physically get and still be strong, and you covering all your whole slide track, then you'd have to think, okay, maybe you have to rig a little tighter rig to get the arc that you need. But that extra body motion just makes way too many, causes too much trouble. And again, I think it's so prevalent because people feel like it's not, but it does.
Okay. And that actually leads quite nicely into the next question, which someone was asking about how it seems like there's a series of interrelated problems. For example, if a rower lunges at the catch, a bunch of other problems follow. So she's asking, if you're a coach trying to fix a connected set of problems like that, where do you start? Are there a couple of good places to begin?
Yeah, again, it almost always it starts with that preparation. I would think, okay, you got to get that body angle early, and the grip. Those are the two big deals. The grip, I think, not having a grip, but having just this handle contact, without squeezing too hard. And there is just definitely control with the fingers are on the handle, but I would say, if your grip is good, elbows are in the right place and not too far up in the air, and then just get the body prep. That really seems to cure most of these issues, the lunging and the missing water and everything else. That would be the place to start.
Okay. I have two more questions, everybody. And we're just about 5:15. So we're coming up on about when we'll cut it off. So if you have any questions that you want answered, if you haven't already sent them, you should send them now. But the next question for you, Dan, is if you could review knuckle position on at the catch and on the recovery.
Yeah. There's the ideal and then there's what people do. But I like to think of you don't want your hand to look like fisty like this. You want the hand to kind of drape around. So the upper row of knuckles is first off, the oar hand, that's where the oar handle kind of rests on the backside of there, where your fingers go into your hand. And so that, I think that's best. If everything else is right, it's just going to become, the hand is just going to become kind of straight out, maybe even a little bit elevated in the wrist. And then your other fingers just sort of fall around the backside, so that it just kind of looks like this is a good grip. You saw like Maddie there like holds way back here. And I think, people get away with that and some people like it, but I think it's better to have the oar handle a little bit more into the hand and just let the fingers drape around a little bit more. But the thing, you see a lot of folks will start to get up in the air with the knuckles up high like that, and then a little too much bend in the wrist. So I'd say this front row of knuckles here should be kind of the front. That's you don't have those kind of way in the back. They should just kind of be up in the front. But there's a lot of personal preference to that. Like again, with Maddie was way back in here. That kind of scares me, but if she gets away with it, she gets away with it. More of just sort of put your hand out, just kind of relax it, and then just let your fingers kind of drape around, and then just stick a handle up in there, and you're all set.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is the last question that I have. So unless anyone gets one in last minute, this will be the last one. But this person was asking if you could define dragging your heels more specifically. And she said, if someone Achilles tendon is short, your heels come up when your feet come up to the footboard. So if you could just describe that movement a little more.
Yeah. So it's, again, as you get your body angle forward, your weight tends to kind of go down in your shoes, down into your heels a bit. And then you just, when you think of just, how you're going to bring yourself forward on the slide, it's an actual, kind of a hamstring curl of sorts, where you're bending to allow the knees to bend, but your heels are sort of a good contact point to kind of begin to draw yourself forward. But absolutely, as you get towards the catch, the flexibility and ankle flexibility and Achilles tendon length and whatnot would create the sense that you might be, if you have stationary clogs or whatnot, your heel might be kind of coming off. But I would think as you get it started, as you get the body prepped and you got to start coming down the slide track, just think, okay, I'm just going to bring my heels to you, or you can think of it as like a bit of a hamstring curl, or you don't think about it at all. Just so long as you get your body angle forward. But I think what people get in trouble with is if they really kind of lift up on their toes a lot, then that induces sort of this down motion, because you're lifting up on your toes, your body tends to drop down, and then that sort of it's easier and it's much more horizontal with the body mass going forwards and back if you have the sense that you're just drawing your heels towards you. And again, some people like to think about other parts of the foot, but I just think that helps keep your hamstrings in a spot where as you change direction, they're really ready to go and engage. That's that.
Okay, great. I did get one more question come in. She said, sorry, real quick, but how fast do you want to rock over out of bow?
Yeah, it's very naturally. You finish the stroke, whoop, and then, your arms come away, and as your arms come away, it's just a nice sequence. Your arms come away, and then your body's just going to flow. So again, it's sort of a rhythm thing. I've had people who just love to rock the hands out fast, and the body follows right after. And other people, the hands kind of wait, and then they kind of float out. But it's like in everything rowing, I think it's sort of just this natural flow based upon your cadence that you're rowing with and everything else. So you don't want to have to create work to do that. And you don't have to. Again, your arms just extend, your body then follows the arms out, you pivot at the hips, your weight ends up on the front of the seat, about the same time your knees start to rise, and you just with very low energy expenditure can kind of flow forwards. So it's, again, some of that is style, but it's not, you don't want to work it. You just kind of have it happen, make it work, make it go. So not too fast, not too slow.
Okay, great. I think that's it. So thank you very much, Dan. Like I said earlier, it was a fantastic presentation. Really clear, coherent explanation of things that I think a lot of us have heard before. So
that's good. Sometimes I have no idea.
No, it was great. For me, it was like there's a lot of things that I've heard so many of these, and I've tried to coach so many of these points, but your explanations brought like a new level to it for me. Awesome. So I really appreciated that.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. So should we pass it back to Troy to close us out?
Cue the outro music, Erica. I don't have anything else to say. And as rants go, that was a pretty gentle rant, Dan.
Yeah.
I meant to make note that the only time I've ever heard you rant before was at the Canadian Henley when one of our more notorious rowers shaved his head early one morning and didn't clean up after himself.
Oh, man.
I remember you yelling down at him, "Get it cleaned up or you're on the street." So that was the one time I've seen Dan angry ever. So I appreciate the gentle rant, as Erica said. Very, very lucid explanations, and I hope everybody got as much out of it as we did. See everybody next week. Erica, you got the music yet or what?
I've got it.
All right, let's go.
That's such a vivid memory of mine still.
So the music that I'm playing now was given to us by people who had watched the webinars and heard Troy joking about needing outro music. So they composed it themselves and told us we could use it. So thanks to Marisol and Chris Kuborn for this song.
I want to listen to the music, man. I don't want to sign off.
I may just let this play for a little while. We're an hour and 21 in. We can go to an hour and a half. Anybody who wants to listen to this for 9 more minutes, just stick around. I'm definitely kidding about that, but we'll let it play for a minute or two. Everyone,
I got another
out.